Good morning, everyone, and welcome to CANTO Conversations. My name is Mike Antonius, and I am the CEO of Calix here in Suriname and Vice Chair of CANTO. I am the host for this webinar. CANTO Conversations is a series of webinars that provides a platform for regional and international experts to discuss COVID-19 and its impact on the Caribbean region. These webinars provide an opportunity to share ideas, initiatives, and solutions as the world deals with this pandemic. This pandemic highlights the critical importance of digital technologies and being connected in times of crisis. Telecommunication companies are the heart of this crisis, proving that they are well equipped to handle the unprecedented surge in traffic as more people rely on digital services to work from home, manage their business, and communicate remotely with friends and family. Response to COVID-19 has demonstrated the strategic importance of robust, resilient, and secure digital infrastructure to the social welfare of everyone in society and in continued functioning of the economy. Today, we have it's an honor for me to have as host Michael Weening. He is from Calix. Calix is the leading global provider of the cloud and software platforms, systems, and services to deliver the unified access network and smart premises of tomorrow. As I mentioned, we have on the chat today Mr. Michael Weening. Michael is the Executive Vice President of Global Operations for Calix. And allow me to give you a brief background about Michael. Michael is responsible for the manufacturing, design, and distribution of the products that the Calix platforms work on, and the field team that leads services through the transformation journey. Responsible for marketing, sales, support, customer access, you name it. He has more than 20 years of experience in leading growth, strategy, and transformation, having held executive positions in North America, Europe, and Asia. Michael, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for welcoming me.
Yes. Now that we have Michael on screen, please allow me to mention some specific household matters, such as please mute your microphones during this conversation. And we will also focus in this 45 minutes of the session on how COVID-19 has affected Calix and what the best practices are for operating in the new abnormal. After the discussions, Michael and I will answer questions from the audience. Please remember that you can post your questions in the Zoom chat, and let's start this discussion. Michael, welcome to CANTO Conversations.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me. So I'm going to share a presentation, and I'm going to spend about 15 minutes walking through some of our perspectives on how Calix is looking at the market, how we see the changes that we're going through. And then, as you mentioned, Mike, we can take some questions and have some great dialogue, right?
Great.
So here, let me hit share. Can you see this fine?
Yes.
And are you seeing the right screen?
Also.
Okay, I'm going to start by saying we like to say the new abnormal, not the new normal. And the reason why we say new abnormal is because I do not believe that we have actually reached what will be the future for us as countries and as societies. If you think about all the different changes that are going on, there remains a significant amount of change, uncertainty, We still do not understand elements of COVID-19 and how do we vaccinate against it? How do we ensure that our communities are kept safe? And so I still call it an abnormal simply because of the fact that we're not there yet. There's still a lot of work ahead. And ultimately, what I'd like to talk about is how we see this, but then also what the leadership opportunity is. Because in these unusual times, in this abnormal time, our communities require all of us to step up as leaders and be the ones who actually guide them through this challenge. At no point in time has it been more important for great leadership. So this is a great time for our communities and for companies like yourselves who have become, as Mike said, the foundation for the communication and people staying together socially in our industry, in our communities, and that's the broadband. And so, you know, as we look at the future, there are constants around how do you build and deliver great broadband experiences, but a lot of those constants and a lot of the best practices that we had before have been thrown out the window. And in every region, there's a unique set of challenges that all of us face. We can't actually just say that in one country or on one island that what works in one place is going to work in another, because it's so geographically disparate and the challenges that each of us face are significantly different. And if I think about CANTO members, let's be honest, you're navigating the perfect storm. Not only do you have just the traditional issue or the issue that everyone else faces around how do I keep my society safe, how do I deal with COVID-19, how do I socially distance successfully to protect my technicians and my employees, but at the same time, from an economic point of view, you have a huge wave coming at you. You have declining tourism. You have, for those of you who have resource markets like oil and other offshore capabilities that you export, you've seen a massive drop. We all know the challenge with the oil market and how oil-oriented countries are really struggling with the drop in that asset. There's restrictions. We all face significant restrictions on what we can disconnect, how we collect, and how do we bring cash into our business to actually run it. And then at the same time, the access to capital markets in a number of CANTO member places is very limited. It's hard to get the capital that you need while at the same time dealing with massive currency fluctuations. So I want to start by saying, I would say the world as a whole has some significant issues, but at the same time, the CANTO members have a different set of issues that are even more significant and make it more challenging. And as we go into this, as I started out by saying, I really do believe that COVID-19 is purely a leadership challenge. All of us, every decision that we can make a decision today and think, you know what, based upon all the data that I have, all the insights, my working with my leadership team, the conversations that I've had with customers and broadly with board members or others, this is the best decision to make. And then on Monday, everything can change. It's all thrown out the window and you're left to make a different decision. So this new abnormal starts with you as leaders. We all have the really big challenge of the stress of facing that any decision that we make at any point in time can be thrown up in the air because of a changing environment that is honestly unprecedented in our world. We've never seen something like this in the age that we've been alive. There's examples that we can refer to in 1920 with the Spanish flu and other areas that we can learn from. But for our generation, this is really a first. And as I think about that leadership challenge, there's also this massive shift that COVID-19 is driving in how we do business, and that's work from home. We call it work from anywhere, not work from home, because we do believe that the notion of where you have to work actually has to change dramatically, and everybody needs to be empowered to work wherever they are. If they're traveling, if they're living at their home, or if they're a different place. And what COVID-19, one of the benefits is, it has demystified for many classes of workers that work from home is a risk and actually may or may not work. What I've seen, and as I speak to peers in the industry, is that there is definitely a view that work from home or work from anywhere is definitely going to be something that holds on in the long term. If you read the different press releases that are out there, people like Twitter and others, they have actually said, hey, we're going to go to this as a permanent model. We at Calix have been in a work from anywhere model for 4 years. We've actually moved out a huge percentage of our staff into remote locations and allowed them to choose where they work from. And I have to tell you, the productivity gains are massive. The gains that we gain from being able to recruit people, from being able to retain people is significant, because instead of having to live in an expensive city, they can decide I'm going to go live in a rural location, which is fantastic. It's been an amazing tool for us and been very successful. But at the same time, it is a leadership challenge. And I think as we go through this shift, not only do we have to deal with the fact that we have all these stressful decisions to be made that could get thrown up in the air at any moment, at the same time, we actually have to really work through how are we going to change our cultures, because this is a massive cultural shift. And as leaders, a couple key things I would point out is that if I was to say what are the most important things that you focus on with regards to this work from home and work from anywhere culture is, they are, first of all, make sure that you have very clear goal setting and don't focus on activity management. One of the mistakes that leaders often make is they go straight to, I need to understand what everybody's doing and I need to see what they're doing to make sure that they're doing their job. That mindset in this type of environment won't work. There are measures that you can put in place. So for example, if you have a support center person, you can measure their productivity. That's what we do. Our support organization is now fully virtual. But you have to focus on what are the goals that you've put in place, make sure they're clearly articulated to the employee, and then help them be successful. And on that helping side, the second thing is make sure you're doing proper one-on-ones. Make sure that with your team members, you are taking the time to actually meet with them one-on-one and not only coach them on the goals that you've agreed to and that you've set, but also understanding what's going on in their lives, what are the challenges that they face. For example, a lot of people are having a lot of difficulty if they have small children. So how can you actually work with them to ensure that they have the flexibility to be successful in that they have some flex time with regards to taking care of their children, but at the same time achieving their goals. The third thing is watch very closely for isolation. One of the things that is very common is that in this new environment, you can actually become very isolated, and this can lead to depression and other things. So really in your one-on-ones, focus on, are they feeling isolated? Are they feeling connected to the broader organization? And make sure that you have active structural support for them in place so that if they're having challenges, they have someone in HR or someone from a counseling point of view to speak to. But at the same time, also make sure that in their home, they have a successful place to work. So a great desk, a great monitor, all those different elements so that they're working in a productive way. The second part of it is, I would say that we're going to have to rethink how we meet. There will be investments that are needed when you go to a work from anywhere environment, where you actually bring to get people together in face-to-face meetings or in offices from time to time to create that social connectivity. So that's something that you as a leader need to consciously think through. And then the last one is, I just pointed out again some of the benefits. It is this flexibility is fantastic. It really helps you attract new employees. It helps you engage with them. And by giving them that flexibility in this new world, I think you're going to find that you have a great jump in productivity and the ability to be more successful in building your teams.
Hey, Michael, sorry for the interruption. It looks like we're seeing a slide ahead as well. So just try your setting to make sure it's the full screen so they can read it.
So which are you seeing is working as a new abnormal? Is that what you're seeing or not?
Yes, we're on the right slide, but we're also seeing your next slide. So it's a slightly different view in PowerPoint. Just want to make sure you got that.
Well, so I just swap displays then. That is better?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, someone should have stopped me earlier. There you go. Now, as broadband providers, this new abnormal is really challenging for all of us, right? Your subscribers are going to remote installations, they're going into their homes, and at the same time, your ability to reach them is very hard. So one of the things you're going to have to really think about is how do you do remote installations, how are you doing remote upgrades, and I'm sure many of you are already working through that. We at Calix have many customer success virtual circles that we're running where we can give you best practices and we can help you out. But at the same time, you need to start thinking about this change in the marketplace is going to represent a significant opportunity. If people are moving out of their office and they're going to start working in their home or wherever it is that they are, you have a great opportunity to make sure that you can provide them a higher level of service during those critical times when they're working So it represents a significant opportunity. And we'll talk a little bit about how to guide your way through that in a moment. The second thing is that events are going to change. I think we've all seen that pretty much every event that I know of has been canceled, and they're all moving into virtual events. This is going to be very interesting as we engage with customers around how do we reimagine what is the experience that we can have with our clients? How do we keep them actively engaged? How do we use social media, chat, all those different elements to ensure that we are actively engaged? And so as we go into it, that's the next challenge that we're really going to have to focus on. How do we as broadband providers change our business? And from a Calix point of view, it's our view that data must be your guide. The world is in chaos. There's a ton of risk. And while, you know, in the past, if you made decisions with your gut, the problem is that your gut may or may not be right simply because of the fact that things are changing at such a rapid pace. So I would highly encourage everybody in the in your organization to get very focused on the data. We inside the organization have a very clear mantra. Don't listen to the, you know, the latest sensationalized media report. Don't focus on rumors and conspiracy theories. Spend all your time focused on what's the data. And the reality is, you as service providers, you are in a position where you have the most powerful insights into a subscriber that anyone else in the market has. You can understand what they're doing, how they're using your broadband. With our technology, we give you the capability to understand if they're now work from home, what are the devices in the home, all those different elements. You must take that data and build it into your decision making so that you can be successful and actually market the right things to the right person at the right time. Because it's all about that experience. How do you create great experiences for them? You know, the other part too is you need to contemplate moving away from an all-in price and really moving into bundles. You're going to see with this new structure in the marketplace, a lot of people are going to require different things. And so giving them the flexibility to buy the things that they need in different packages will become more important than it ever has been before. You know, and I would say that as you're going through this data mining, so as you actually look at your networks, really think hard about how can I get great data into a centralized location and then turn it into a decision-making engine for your organization. You know, and I want to take a simple example of, you know, building networks. I will say that I think we are also going to see a significant shift of, over the long term to fiber. This change, so what we're doing today on Zoom video, the days of a fast download being the only way that someone, you know, is successful and is happy are over. Upload speed is now going to become one of the most important elements of what creates a great subscriber experience. I need a fast upload to upload the video that I'm doing today on this Zoom video. And then if you look broadly, you know, I think video gaming is up like 60% during COVID-19. And what's important in video gaming? Latency. So the life of a fiber network, it became even more valuable than it was before. And I think we're going to see a significant shift away from slow uploads and fast downloads to requiring a very fast symmetrical service. So I will say that if you're thinking about building, this is the perfect time to do it. Not only in your local economy does that allow you to actually create jobs for people who currently don't have jobs, it is at the same time a long life asset. As you know, a fiber, once the fiber's in, you can go from 1 gig to 10 gig to doing what Verizon's doing with 40 gig. You have all this flexibility, so it can be in the ground for 10 or 15 years, and you can keep gaining benefit and benefit and benefit from that asset by upgrading the endpoints. So this is a great time to build fiber, not only because of the fact that it's needed, but because it can help your community. And you're going to see more and more customers requiring this. And so we would also say that when you're doing the data, really look at how what data or what the insights are into the subscriber to determine where you should build. And I'll give you a simple example. We have one customer, actually, their first fiber build was into a low economic trailer park. But their data said that's where we have to build first, and they had a 95% uptake rate. Why? Because those people in their economic strata, it was a lower economic strata, they didn't spend a lot of time out at restaurants and doing all these different things. Their entire lives were around video games and Netflix and the TV that they had from Costco. And so they rolled the fiber into it and they had a 95% uptake. So the traditional demographics of I only need to roll my high-end services to a rich person, COVID-19 is actually going to turn that upside down also, because now an employee who used to be going to the office may now be working from home. They may get a stipend from their company to actually invest in their monthly internet, and they'll want to have the best experience possible. So as you're going through all of this and you're using data to drive it, and again, I cannot stress enough that data is critical to navigating through it. It's something that we talk to all of our customers around. We have something called Calix Marketing Cloud, which is all around real-time behavioral analytics out of your network to help you understand that subscriber. So as you harness that data and help you make those decisions, remember that it's the perfect time because everybody is relying on you. As Mike said, you know, the broadband has now become as important as water and as electricity. This work from a home environment, it is not going away. For the most part, people are going to adapt this and they'll never go back because the productivity gains are so significant. And there's a huge opportunity in your communities around being a catalyst to help e-commerce and e-government and also drive that next generation of tourist or local. And, you know, I'll say this, I have somebody on my team and she's from Halifax, but she actually spends half her time down in the Bahamas. And one of the frustrations that she has is that she can't actually get the internet speeds that she needs. However, if she was to get a fiber connection to her home, she would then be able to actually have the connectivity that she has even when she's in North America. It would be the same experience. Nobody cares where she works because we're very focused on what is it that she's doing and is she driving the outcomes. If she decides to do it on a beautiful island or on the east coast of North America, we don't care, that's her choice, but she must have that amazing experience. She has to have great Wi-Fi in her home to support her. She has to have a really fast upload speed so that she's not interrupted when she's on a video conference with teammates or with customers. And so these are the really important things that we're focused on. And I think at this point, there's no better time for us to stand up, make investments in our network, and see them pay in a large way through an amazing subscriber experience. You know, and in closing, I've kept this short so we can have a conversation. You know, I put on my LinkedIn, feel free to send me a LinkedIn, but I wrote an article called Work From Home as a Leadership Test. Are you good enough? I just talked through some of the things that we've covered today, which is around how do you build great teams, how you adjust to this environment and drive success for your company and your team. And with that, that is
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. That's my preamble.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael. Very interesting presentation. And the last quote to start with, work from home, is a leadership challenge. And we as leaders are focused on this part. During this stage of COVID-19, you elaborated a lot about what Calix is doing and that you're familiar with working from anywhere, actually. But how has COVID-19 affected Calix in this stage?
Well, so I would say inside from a culture point of view, it had almost no impact on our teams other than very busy. So we are the busiest I think we've ever been. Our customers are seeing a massive spike in demand. So we have a lot of work to do. But with regards to how our culture works, very little impact. And in fact, what happened was there were a number of changes that we were going to make that this actually sped it up. So for example, our support organization, about half of the team was work from anywhere and half was still working in an office. We had a plan to go full virtual and we actually had all the infrastructure in place. We had that capability. We had some people who wanted to do it, some people who didn't. This obviously forced everybody in our support organization to become remote. And after 3 weeks, we actually polled the entire team and we said, how's it going? And they all said, we never want to go back. So what it did was it actually sped up a number of changes. On the development side, you know, developers actually, and I'm involved with the software teams and all those, and I have a number of anecdotes I can share. On the developer side, developers have always had this belief that you have to be in the same office to collaborate and be successful because you're creating, right? And I had a friend of mine who's a CEO of a very large cloud analytics company, and he said the epiphany for his R&D teams were they used to be in different locations. So while it's true, they could definitely collaborate more effectively with the person who was right next to them. What they ended up doing was they would get on these Zoom calls and they would have people from different offices all connecting, and they never realized how much they were missing out by not connecting beyond the person next to them. And so what they found is that they were actually dramatically more effective. They collaborated a lot more. It required some, you know, getting used to, because you don't just have a big whiteboard to go write on, which is difficult, right? Which we all like to whiteboard. But it actually has led to a significant increase in collaboration. And we've seen that inside Calix too, is that if we have multiple development sites, we have 2 on the West Coast, 1 on the East Coast, we have 1 in Asia. And what's happened is that it has just led to a better collaboration across the organization. So with regards to our customers, what we're seeing is a massive spike in demand. And so, especially fiber customers. So the simple reality is that, and you know, I won't hide, a cable network, which has obviously dominated copper companies, right? So cable has taken significant market share, and I believe that those days are over, because what's going to be demanded in the future is fiber. You have to have a fast, symmetric experience if you're going to be successful on Zoom, if you're going to have a seamless experience. So download speed is no longer good enough. You have to have a fast upload speed. And if nothing else, you know, it was 10 years ago that, or 7 to 10 years ago, that gaming actually became a larger industry than movies. So if you think about the implications to that, as they get more complex, as they move more data, that's going to be all about symmetrical speed and low latency. And so the time for fiber, I believe that this is actually a significant inflection point in the industry. Copper is dead. Copper was dead 3 years ago. It's just about how fast can you rip it out. In fact, for the most part, we don't sell any more copper. 99% of what we do is fiber. And the fiber network, our fiber customers are taking massive market share from cable companies. Okay,
great. But with this development, Michael, the enormous demand from customers for fiber, how are you dealing with, for instance, the installation part with regard to the health issues that there are in these days,
yes.
the risks? How are you dealing with that?
We've had some great innovation from customers. So, you know, the first thing is that we have over 600 people, 600 customers who actually use our support cloud, which is all about remote. When, you know, and the reason why they rolled that out is because for the most part, prior to COVID, everybody wants to stop rolling trucks. They want to stop going and fixing people's Wi-Fi. They want to stop taking those Wi-Fi calls, right? So if you don't have a system running your call center that gives you complete remote control of your customer's environment, because it's not very infrequently is it the connection to the home, it's almost always the Wi-Fi, right? And it gets even worse if they go to the local electronics store and they buy a Google Mesh or something like that, because then they call you if they're having problems and you're like, well, I don't have no insight into what that thing's doing, so how can I help you? So I'd say the first thing is you need to have remote control of everything that's going on in the home. And our customers who did that prior to COVID-19 are why it's no change, because they were managing everything remote. With regards to installations, a lot of innovation. So we actually have customers who have done something like they tack everything on a board, they hand it to the customer and say, take this board, put it in your house, right? Plug this and this, and you're good to go. So they actually pre-configure everything outside before they go in. It's all tacked to a kind of a 2 foot, a meter by meter board, and then they hand it in, right? So that's the way that they're attempting to social distance. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot more innovations like that, because the reality is this isn't going away and everybody's fearful. I don't want to let you in my house. I don't want to go in your house, right? So we're going to see a lot more remote control.
Okay, great. I have been talking also to some other CEOs, and something that they bring up once in a while is they see 2020 as a lost year. What is your view about that?
It's an interesting question. I've thought a lot about that. I kind of go back and forth. Is it lost or is it not, right? I believe that for broadband providers, it absolutely is not a lost year. I think for someone who lost their job or they have a restaurant and they're now in this terrible place because they can, it's difficult to make a restaurant work on a good day when you can have 100% of the people in your restaurant. Imagine how hard it's going to be for them when they have to do social distancing and they can only run at 50% capacity. So I think that for the general economy, this will definitely be a lost year. But I think for broadband providers, actually what's come out is that the services that we provide actually are as fundamental as electricity and water to our communities. And people now understand that, which is why you've also seen governments stepping up in a large way to make investments and help service providers roll out. So I see a question around, developing countries such as Ghana that have underserved communities. Are there approaches that we can adopt to ensure that people are not left behind? I think this really comes down to a lot of local conversations with the government around how do we ensure that people who may not be able to afford it, so how do I actually subsidize them to get broadband so that they can actually work from home, so that they can seek another job. I think that these are the types of opportunities that broadband providers have to actually work with the government in hand on how do we actually serve all of those communities. So
great. I want to remind our participants that they can drop their questions in the chat. I have one more question for you before I go to the questions of the audience. Can you tell us a little bit about, because here in the Caribbean it is a little different. We're not that automated as probably there in the US. What would you recommend during this stage, how to move to that stage of more automation while we are in the COVID pandemic situation?
Well, so I think I personally believe that there's levels of automation that you can enable very, very quickly that don't require a lot of hand-holding. They don't require a lot of, it's not like digging a trench and putting in a fiber or going into somebody's house. And so my first recommendation is if you do not have your support organization automated, that's where you need to start. And it's really important. You have to have the insights into the home to manage Wi-Fi. Otherwise, this is going to be a nightmare for you, because you're going to keep doing what you currently do, which is going to be roll trucks to try and figure out what happens and all those different elements. It just won't work. And so, we have a cloud product that actually runs call centers. It's wildly successful. It can get up and running very quickly. It supports anyone's network. So it's not just Calix premises units. And what it does is it has all kinds of insights into how do you manage Wi-Fi. And I think the other part that we've done is that we've made a significant investment in customer success, which is something that I ran when I was at Salesforce. I ran it globally. And what customer success is, it's not just about what tool I pick. It's also around, does the company step up and give you best practices? And that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is the community of customers that we have. They all help each other, and they all share great best practices, and our success teams spend all their time educating so that you can actually, learn from this person. That worked, that didn't work. How can I avoid it so I can actually fix things faster? That's the first thing. The second thing is, look, there's a lot of fancy things you can do with data. You can go build yourself a big data warehouse, but then you have to go and get really expensive data scientists and all those different elements. My view on this is that again, we've made significant investments on the data science side, and we have a tool that allows you to be successful without data scientists. So to get all the data out of the subscriber, look at what's going on in your network and make decisions without requiring, 10 data scientists to parse through massive data lakes. So that's the other element of automation, because if you don't get to the data, and there's not a lot of, there are lots of companies that have lots of data, but most companies don't know how to use it. And this is what we've invested all of our money in, is actually not only getting you the data, but then how do you use it? Back to that customer success side. So, for example, we can see when someone's doing a speed test in their home. And what do? The best practice on that is you should load it up into your call center and make an outbound call to them and say, hi, how are you doing? Because the only time anyone does a speed test is when they're angry, right? You never do a speed test because, oh my gosh, my experience is so fantastic. I just want to see how fantastic it is, right? You do it because you're angry.
Yes.
And so we've actually automated that into a process where your call center rep can then make a phone call out, or you can actually send a note email to them and say, hey, can you tell us how things are going, to actually get ahead of the problem, right? Which very few service providers are proactive and get ahead of the problems, but that's what we've actually done with our service providers, is get ahead of the problems. We can also see Wi-Fi, what's going on in their Wi-Fi network, so we can see if they're having problems, because I can see an iPhone dropping, things like that. This is the type of data that you need, but you don't want it in some big fancy data lake that takes forever to get to it. You actually want it so that the call center rep and the marketer can use it on their own with no assistance, with no data analyst, but they can actually just use it to make decisions day by day. Because the reality is that until we democratize data and make it available to everybody in the organization, it's not very useful. It's not good enough that we as senior leaders, yourself as a CEO, Mike, you know, it's great that you get reports out of the data warehouse so you can see how things are going. But what is most important is actually that your line people get the data so they can make decisions every single day.
Yes, thank you.
Fiber to the home requires, do you want me to answer this question here? Greg Anderson asked, fiber to the home requires significant capital expenditure, and this may be challenging for developing countries. With the development in radios, 5G broadband access by consumers will eventually technology. So why should service providers look at fiber only? There are definitely use cases in some places where 5G wireless is appropriate because you have massive distance between individuals. It is our belief that fiber is inevitable. So if you can get a fiber into that home, then it's forever. It's not a 10, 20-year life cycle asset. It's an asset that is very long. And the reason why there are huge amounts of money going into fiber infrastructure is because if you think about it as an investor, so a PE person, they're looking at it and they're saying, and you see all kinds of PE money going into markets, you know, they're looking at it and saying, wow, I can actually go and monetize this asset for a really, really long time, and therefore I'm willing to actually make that investment. The reality is that capital, for the most part, is, you know, you've heard a number of leaders actually offer or contemplate negative interest rates, right? This is a time where, you know, I'm 52. I remember when my parents had a mortgage and they paid an 18% mortgage, right? You know, you're getting capital now for 2 to 4%. There are all kinds of charity organizations that are making donations. There's capital to be had. And if you make that investment, you're going to make a lot of money. It may take 10 years before you get to that investment payoff. But for long-term infrastructure investors, it's a remarkable investment. And the reality is, look, 5G is fine, but 5G is shared bandwidth. And with the loads that we're putting on our networks, I understand it. If I'm a farmer in a real rural area, you know, I'm not going to run 3,000 meters of fiber just to get to one person unless they're willing to pay for it, right? So there are those outside use cases, and those people, ultimately, because of their location, they will always have to have a lower level of service. But for anyone who can get fiber, that's the only choice. And that's why we're seeing so much investment in it.
Thank you. Let me address the questions from our audience to you. There is an interesting one and a little bit tough, but I think you can handle it.
Dude.
In developing countries such as Ghana, the unserved and underserved localities are substantial. There are bespoke approaches, solutions that can be adopted to ensure those people are not left behind. How can offline participate in this new environment?
I already answered that question, and I answered the next one, but I'll go back over it one more time. My answer to that one is I think this is a great opportunity for governments and broadband providers to partner, to look at how can I actually get government investment, charity investment. There are many different funds out there that are helping out with underserved areas and those types of locations like Ghana. And so I think it's where the government and the broadband provider have this opportunity where sometimes that can be a very contentious relationship. This is an opportunity for those two groups to come together and be true partners.
Okay.
I have not answered the last question.
Yeah, the last one. This is from Facebook Live. What are the key fundamental requirements for telecom companies to develop the most basic infrastructure cloud to transform into and enable adoption during this COVID digital transformation?
I'll go back to what I said before. I think the starting point needs to be in your call center. You actually need to implement a cloud. And again, there's something we can help with. But you need to actually implement a cloud that allows you to remote control the subscriber experience in the home from a Wi-Fi point of view. And because that is your highest source of call volumes, that is the place where your customers are going to have the greatest challenge. And if you can address that with data and insights and remote control, the payoff on that is incredible. For many customers, they've seen 3 to 4 month payoffs, because I have customers who have seen like 70 and 80% drops in call volumes. And in fact, they've taken their inside call center people and turned them into outbound sales reps because they actually haven't had the calls anymore. So I think that to me is the most important one. If your call center is not automated, you need to start there. And then the second one is, I would go back to, you can go down the path of building out a bespoke data model and using, getting the analytics and all those different elements by setting up a big data warehouse. Or you can actually look at somebody who is like us, who's dedicated to your environment, who understands telcos, and who has built something that is bespoke for telecom that can be up and running in 45 days and give you insights into who to market what to and what the experience that they're having. And that's what we've done with the Marketing Cloud.
Great. In this CANTO conversations, Michael, you have addressed and emphasized a lot in the beginning, the leadership challenge. So there is another responsibility for us as leaders to guide our companies and guide our own employees in this stage where we're heading, the new abnormal, as is mentioned by you. This responsibility, how are you dealing with it?
The way we're dealing with it is we start out with our employees, right? So really focused on making sure that our employees are safe, that they're healthy, that they're not making bad decisions. We have some employees who want to go and see customers and they want to get on site and they want to, I don't, and there is a lot of misinformation out there. So there are some people who still don't believe that COVID is a risk, right? There are a lot of people dying. And so we start with employee health. So really reinforcing our policies to make sure that they're protected. That's the first thing. The second thing, we actually spend a lot of time internally. So every 2 weeks, our CEO gets on a call for 90 minutes with all of our staff. It's a broad conversation, and we talk about COVID-19. So we demystify things. So for example, there was a nasty conspiracy theory going on with regards to, China created the virus. We made sure everybody in our team say, do not focus on conspiracy theories and nonsense that's on Facebook. Spend all your time focused on data. So we spend time sharing with our team, here's what the data. So this is where they are with vaccines. This is where, and that really helps people from a nerves point of view because everybody's nervous. And so we're investing in educating our teams on what's going on so that they feel comfortable that we as a leadership team are paying very close attention, right? And then the last part is, whatever we can do for our customers. The reason why our teams are so busy right now is because our customers are kind of going through the roof. And so we have like 10x our virtual engagement with customers, the best practice sharing webinars that we run something called Virtual Circles, which is only 7 or 8 customers getting together to share on problems. And we've converted all of our virtual circles into very COVID orientated ones. Let's get 10 people on a call. Let's talk from 10 different companies. Let's talk about how are you dealing with safety? How are you dealing with, remote install and all those elements? And so we've really focused with our customers on how can we be great disseminators of information And I would encourage you to go to the Calix website. If you go to calix.com and then right across the top, it says COVID-19. You can click into that. And then there's a whole web page which is filled with webinars that you can attend, best practice sharing, all these different things as we learn from our customers and as our customers make mistakes, but also are successful and do things right, spending a ton of time sharing that information so that others can also be successful. But it starts with our employees.
Thank you very much, Michael. I will give a brief summary about the CANTO conversations this morning. You mentioned, Michael, that we have not reached the end of this yet, and therefore we don't know what the future will bring for us. We call it, therefore, the new abnormal, because there is no cure yet as well for the virus. But the new abnormal is a leadership challenge. Every decision is subject to change, and we need to focus towards work from anywhere, and this is not going away. Focus on goal setting with our employees and not activity management, and help employees to be successful with proper one-on-ones with them. Flexibility is the way to go in the new world. Data must be our guide to become successful in the new abnormal. And we must make sure that working from anywhere becomes seamless.
It's a great summary.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your time with us this morning. Remember that the next webinar will be on Tuesday, the 9th of June at the same time, 10 a.m. Our chairman, David Cox, the chairman of CANTO, will interview Dr. Mark Jameson, Director, Public Utilities Research Center of the University of Florida. They will focus on regulatory considerations during and post-COVID-19. Thank you everyone for attending CANTO Conversations. It was a pleasure for me for having Michael Weening with us. Stay home, stay safe, stay connected, and let's continue working from anywhere. This was CANTO Conversations. My name is Mike Antonius, and I had as host Michael Weening from Calix. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.
Stay safe.